and see me, that's fine.
You're doing great.
Okay, our speaker today will address two areas of focus of Rotary International: promoting peace and saving our environment. For those of you who have seen Sister Act with Whoopi Goldberg, you know a nun using unconventional means can do great things for her community. So it is with our guest speaker, Sister Pat Siemen. Pat is Prioress for the Dominican Sisters of Adrian, Michigan. And in layman terms, that's CEO and chairperson. And for those familiar with nuns, they used to wear brown habits, but they didn't fly. As an attorney, she founded 2 Earth Law Centers, taught Earth Jurisprudence at several Florida law schools, and contributed to the first ever law school textbook on Earth law. Pat has represented migrant farm workers, served as a former staff attorney in the U.S. Department of Justice, voting rights section, is a former community organizer with the African American and Latinex communities, and was a teacher and pastoral assistant. She holds a JD from Northeastern University School of Law and a master's in spirituality and culture from Holy Names University in Oakland, California, a master's in public affairs from the University of Texas at Austin, and a bachelor in history from Siena Heights University in Adrian, Michigan. She is a licensed member of the Michigan and Florida Bar Associations. Pat comes from a rural farming community in Michigan and loves bird songs, kayaking, and downhill skiing. Sister Pat has a double meaning for me. She is my stepsister. After my father passed away at a young age, my mother married a widower neighboring farmer, bringing our family to a nice even dozen. Pat, welcome to the Rotary Club of Bellingham, and you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Paul, for a great introduction. I'm really delighted to be with all of you. And it was fascinating to be a part of your early conversations and listen in. I felt like I was part of the family. So anyway, I'm delighted to be with you and to explore together some of our shared values of environmental concerns and also in peacemaking. And Rick, I put the control, I know I have control, but if you would move the slide, I'd appreciate it. The next slide. I think maybe it just scrolls down.
Let me try this again. I apologize.
That's okay.
Okay, let me open it up first on my side. Hold on. Give me just one moment here. Desktop, Rotary Club, Pat. Okay, so we got that. And we're going to Rotary. Hold on. And we're going to go share. Okay. And I've got it here. Okay, so I'm now sharing it out so you can see that. And yes. I'm trying to do page down, page up, and it's not responding on my side, but I'm going to go try clicking here. There we go. I found a way to do it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. So I should have been making use of the time we had there. So Adrian is a small town in southeastern Michigan, not far from Ann Arbor or Toledo. So if any of you are from any part of the Illinois, Ohio, Michigan area, might have a sense of where that is. So our campus, our mother house, we call it the mother house, that's the headquarters of the congregation. You have an aerial view there. When we founded it in 1884, none of those buildings obviously were there, and it was mostly covered by trees. And our sisters came from New York, and they were Dominican sisters. And we came to really work with primarily German immigrants in education and also in parishes. So we started with just one tiny house that housed 4 sisters, a little wooden house. And then also within a year or so, we built another house with about 6 bedrooms. It really was a small hospital for aged and injured railroad workers. Now, on the east side of our campus, we have a railroad that used to be kind of a hub in Adrian. And there was a need for, as railroad workers aged out, many of them didn't have families to go to. So anyway, it didn't take our sisters very long, though, to figure out that working with aged railroad workers was not really an incentive to vocations. So we founded an academy in the late 1890s. So if we can go to the next slide. This is a gathering that we had back in July of 2019. I'm so glad we didn't plan for it in 2020 because we wouldn't have had it. It's a gathering of our sisters, of our associates, and of what we call partners in mission. And I know you are all into a lot of collaborative partnerships as well. Our partners in mission would be also our co-workers who work with us, and also people within our sponsored institutions like our universities and schools, and people who serve on our different boards and committees. It is, we are located in 4 countries, in certainly the United States, but also the Dominican Republic, in the Philippines, in the province of Pampanga, and also in Norway. So so this was a gathering we had where we came together, and the theme of our gathering was embracing the future. If we could have our next slide. So today we're going to talk about different ways of peacemaking, and then also what I call ecological sustainability or care for the environment. And for we as Dominican sisters, I would say our primary way of supporting peace is really through prayer, first and foremost. We have about over half of us are elders and retired, and their ministry is what we say prayer and presence. So as the conflict is going on right now between Israel and Palestine, we have powerful prayer, a powerhouse of prayer, that there can be a peaceful resolution to a conflict such as that. However, for us, a key way of making peace is really in honoring different forms of diversity and in building what we say right relationships that are based on justice and equity and really care for one another. We have, just this year, we have delved into our archives in order to really look at our own congregational and personal history and how we have been a part of sustaining racist structures. Not intentionally, of course, but like most of us who are white, we do have built-in privileges that are structural that I think we haven't recognized, at least I'm going to speak for us. We haven't recognized that until just very recently. So we have committed ourselves to what we say reckoning with racism as we go forth into the future. So our next slide, please. Another way that we do peacemaking may seem a little unusual, but at this point in our history, at least 70% of our revenue that we need for operating expenses and caring for close to 230 elderly sisters our investments are on the stock market. And for over 40 years, we have what we call a portfolio. That's our investment portfolio advisory board. And we've been very active with the Interfaith Center for Corporate Responsibility in New York. And over the years, we have created our own criteria for doing some exclusionary investment. So we have compiled a whole screen of what we used to call socially responsible investment guidelines. Now today's language is more along the line of ESG, environment, social, and governance screens. Now, what does that mean practically? It means that we work with our money managers and investments managers so that, for example, one of our longtime screens is that we will not hold any investments in the top 100 defense contractors or manufacturers of weapons and also of guns at this point in time. We monitor most recently corporations and their stance on climate change, or in one sense, those who are maybe the major offenders at pollution of air, land, and water. Of course, we all leave a footprint. We're humans. We all leave some kind of a footprint on Earth. But we really work closely with our investment managers on screening our portfolio along those lines. Some of our social responsible actions would be in investments are we engage in corporate dialogues with management, and we'll file shareholder resolutions if necessary in certain areas. The other piece that we do is we use our own funds for community impact investments. And since 1974, we have made 566 low interest impact investments across the United States. We have invested over those 40 plus years, $37.4 million. And we've had a repayment rate from these small enterprises of 98.7% over more than 40 years. And I think any bank would love to have those statistics. We believe that enhancing economic security in local and usually marginalized communities is a key piece, a part of peacemaking. So the next slide, please. So another commitment that we have made is what we call investing in resilient communities. It has a lot of the same criteria as our impact investing, but it's a bit larger. At our last general chapter, for us, that's a legislative assembly. It happens every 6 years. We set priorities, and we committed ourselves to do some investment in building and helping to support resilient communities. And by that, we mean communities that really have the capacity to make a difference in marginalized communities primarily. So last month, at the end of April, for example, we just approved a resilient community partnership investment in Mercy Housing Northwest, which is right in your own backyards. Mercy Housing Northwest, we will be helping them establish after-school programs for the children in 8 of the Mercy Housing's residencies. So that's it, and we invested $1.5 million. We only make a few of these commitments, but it is using our own funds to help build resilient communities in greater need. That's part of our preaching mission as well, I would say. Another piece that we've done that is quite interesting is that in 2018, we worked with Greystone Consulting, and they are a subsidiary of Morgan Stanley. And in developing criteria for Climate Solutions Fund, as we we wanted to be proactive in investing in what are the solutions to climate. And so if you can see the logo, it says at the top, Dominican Sisters Climate Solutions Movement. Morgan Stanley and Greystone Consulting felt that we Dominican Sisters really helped inspire them to create 2 climate solutions funds. One of them is a private equity fund that is now closed, And they have another fund that is Climate Solutions Impact Fund, which is open for investment, but it is to not-for-profit organizations to invest in. I can give you more information on that if you're interested later. If we can move to the next slide, please. That's a picture of some of the Dominican leaders when we gathered in front of Morgan Stanley, where we gathered at Morgan Stanley headquarters. That was in June of 2018. And that's when the fund was beginning to be rolled out. And I have to say, I personally had the good fortune of introducing James Gorman, the CEO of Morgan Stanley, who was attending this affair. And can't quite see very well, but their digital marquees were saying, Morgan Stanley welcomes Dominican Sisters. So we stopped traffic there at the corner in New York City for about 7 or 8 minutes. So that was quite interesting. But from 17 Dominican congregations in the US, we took some of our, we leveraged some of our retirement funds to create a $46 million seed investment that today leverages over $136 million fund for climate solutions. So again, yeah, we think of this creatively as also making peace, because it's bringing both together, the saving of the environment and peacemaking into one umbrella. So if we can have the next slide. So this slide just talks about, at our general chapter, this was the language that came forth from the delegates that really authorized our moving into climate concerns as a justice issue. And so we committed to sacrifice significantly our impact on climate change and ecological degradation. So when we make a commitment, we do our best to stand behind it. So our next slide is moving clearly now into a more traditional environmental care. And this would be of land, water, and air. And so these are 5 of the main categories for sustainability. It's obviously what are our energy sources, and what's the production, what's the food production process, what are our purchasing practices, what are our modes of transportation, how do we handle waste, and overall, how do we care for land and earth? And so those are all interdependent factors. I'm going to break open each one of them for just a little bit. We can go to the next slide. So we have a permaculture site on our property, and permaculture is kind of a technical term. It's a design system that emphasizes the interaction between ecological sustainability, the integration of your practices, and cooperation with natural systems. So the goal is to embrace a permanent and sustainable and renewable ecological culture. And our next slide. Part of this permaculture mindset really is supporting biodiversity. And so we really take care to follow what are the native plants and what are the native flora and fauna. And in addition to that, we have just added bees to our land, and we've got a new set of, like, I think we have about 30,000 bees now that we hope will become part of the natural pollinators in our area and wider. Our next slide. Now, I don't know if you know about vermiculture, but if you think that looks like worms, you're right. Those are worms, and that's not a coffin that's next to it. It is a worm bed. And because a part of our composting, we're trying to really reduce the amount of our waste that goes into landfill. So we have, just looking up in my notes here, we have 2 of these large worm beds that are about 8 feet by 4 feet, and then they don't have a bottom. The bottom goes right into the earth. And we have about 250,000 worms, which are red wigglies that compost food waste and certain kinds of paper waste. So on our campus, we have a retreat and conference center. And when it's open, it hasn't been closed because of COVID, but we use compostable paper plates and products in that. And then all of our food waste get fed to the worms that the worms can eat. So we save approximately almost 10,000 pounds of CO2 emissions by not putting the food into a landfill and by having it compost naturally. I'll go on to our next slide, please. So that we also have a water and soil story. We are really committed to land health. And so we have put in rain gardens. We have berms and swales on, particularly on the permaculture site, but anywhere that we don't have buildings. We have stormwater retention ponds. And the rain barrels, the water capture system is used for, we've got raised beds so that our sisters that are in our assisted living, and we also have a skilled care center, but they can come out in their amigos and they can garden because the raised beds are high enough to be at their waist level. And so they can grow their own vegetables and flowers in particular. So our next slide, please. So we've done a lot of work on trying to reduce our carbon footprint. And right now we are at the beginning of starting to develop a 7-acre solar array that should be finished before snow comes. And that's going to help us reduce our energy usage by over 35% on our campus. We are, right now, we have 100% renewable energy source because we contract with Consumers Energy for their green energy, providing green energy source to us. And we have, we've put in different kinds of cooler systems so that, because our campus is large and we're trying to be as responsible as we can on reducing our carbon footprint. So if we can have the next slide, please. Getting towards the end. So basically, I mean, all of us sisters at some point of our lives were educators and actually in the classroom. Today we do many different things, and but we maintain our commitment to the transformative power of education and lifelong learning. And I can tell from our conversations that I was listening in on, you also believe strongly, Rotarians believe strongly in lifelong learning as well. We really believe that part of the change that needs to happen globally for peace to last is a transformed consciousness of how interdependent we are with all of the life forms and with each other. And I think the next slide is my last one. So just as a reminder, we believe that the future belongs to all of us. That's not only to all humans, but to all of the various species that we share Earth with. And this is a week that in the Catholic tradition, we're celebrating Laudato Si, which was Pope Francis's encyclical on care for the environment and care for our common home. And that is really one of our major commitments, is to make sure that the future belongs to all of us. I thank you, and I will welcome any questions and see if I can answer them or respond.
Well, Patty, obviously you've come a long way from the brown habits in the classrooms.
Except ours were white, Paul. Our habits were white.
Oh, yours were white. Okay. All right. All right. So is there, you've come a long way. Is there a next major initiative on your horizon for your sister community, or are you focused on what you just presented?
Well, those are the priorities that came out of our chapter of 2016. We will have another general chapter in 2022. We will then be electing a new leadership team. So I pass the baton to someone else at that time. I would say what is really emerging for us as a significant focus is recognition of the multicultural aspects of ourselves. Because we have sisters in the Philippines and in the Dominican Republic, the future of religious life that we live is really much more multicultural. And so I think that commitment to really studying our place within multicultural and international understandings of different cultures, and our ongoing work with reckoning with racism, those are high on our list of consciousness right now. Okay. And living lives with integrity and welcoming of all.
Okay. Thank you, Patty. Gary, are we up against the time now?
Well, if there's one last question, we have time for it. Otherwise, I'll take it back. Anyone have a question they want to ask?
Yeah, Sister Pat, I'm kind of wondering about your outreach in Norway. It seems like Norway is a pretty self-sufficient place at this point.
Well, the outreach, believe it or not, was really started by our sister in the Philippines. And it was two Filipino sisters that are there. They're up in Bodo, which is the northern part of Norway. And because there are a lot of Filipinos who have migrated to Norway because they're always looking for good jobs, and often many of the Filipino people need to leave their countries. And so they provide a lot of the health care. And so there's a rather large Filipino community in Norway, and these sisters went to accompany them, believe it or not. I had the chance to visit them last year, and I'm really glad I got to see it in operation. So they work in a parish, so they work in religious education, but primarily with the Filipino community.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, in Norway, those who went from the Philippine Islands to cold, cold, cold Norway.
I think Catherine had one quick question.
Okay, go ahead.
Just a quick question, Pat. Thank you for the very interesting presentation and this informative slideshow and so forth. It's encouraging to see all that you're doing. And my question is about what sounds like a major emphasis for you, which is the powerhouse of prayer, which I think is the phrase that you use. Is that a Zoom meeting?
No, I mean, we offer many opportunities for retreats and prayer, but no, that's really our elder sisters, their ministry, because they cannot be out and about anymore. They pray in various forms throughout the day for many, many intentions. And we actually have a prayer list online, of course. And actually, if you go to our website, which is adriandominicans.com, .org, pardon me. If you go to our website, at the top, we have a public website, and you can add prayer intentions if you wish. And our sisters will pray as well for those intentions.
Oh, good. That's really interesting. Thank you.
You don't have to put your name on it. You can keep it as private as you want, but we will pray for it.
Okay, great.
Thank you. I'm sorry. I practiced this 2 or 3 times, but I get enthused, and so then I went longer. Sorry.
Absolutely great. We are right on schedule. How about a big Rotary round of applause for Sister Pat?